Follow the leader. If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Follow the leader.
Oh my God.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
You are listening to The Black Pack. I'm your host, Adrianne Shropshire, here at KBLA Talk 1580. And we are continuing what feels like a long and ongoing conversation about the fight to protect our civil rights with advocates who are in that fight and fighting for all of us. And we talk oftentimes, and I know that I feel like every day, some conversation about technology, where tech is going. We hear about AI like every second of every day. And folks might remember last week, I had a guest on and he was talking about tech and tech policy. And I said, well, I'm going to have you all back on. And he said, actually, you should have my colleague on. So I am so pleased to be joined by Danielle Davis, the Director of Technology Policy at the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies. So welcome, Danielle. I'm so glad that you're here.
Yes, thank you for having me.
So I had Dietrich on last week, and I'm glad that we were able to to turn around quickly and have you come on. But I was hoping that before we jump into some of the complications around what's happening with tech policy, that you could just talk a little bit about your work and what you all are hoping to help everyone understand about what's happening with tech policy.
Absolutely. So I am the Director of Technology Policy for the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies. That's essentially like we call ourselves the Black think tank. We do research aimed at the Black community specifically. And in my portfolio, the tech policy portfolio, I focus on various issues such as broadband access, broadband affordability, content moderation, which includes a law called Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, privacy, which includes AI. And we research these issues specifically with their impact on the Black community. So that's what makes the Joint Center special in that regard, that we're not necessarily focusing on everybody as a whole. We're focusing on the unique impact that technology has on the Black community.
Yeah, so I feel like this is all of this is complicated, right? And so I know that I'm gonna as we're talking through this today, I'm going to ask you to, what do people say? Explain it to me like I'm five, because things feel like they're evolving very quickly, and we're seeing it kind of show up in even in legislation in ways that I think are potentially not helpful, and maybe in some other ways potentially actually sort of bad for all of us. And one of the places that we saw this question around how do we regulate technology come up was in the big, terrible, horrible bill that passed recently. And there was a provision in the bill that essentially was going to let states sort of implement their own AI technology, or, I'm sorry, their own AI regulations. And so I wanted to ask you about that, because it really seems like, in this moment, and that was taken out, right? But it does feel like the federal government, as always, when it comes to regulation, has to play a role in making sure that communities are protected. And so I want to just get your take quickly on why it matters that the federal government sort of inserts itself in regulation around tech.
So the reason why it would matter that the federal government inserts itself around tech is that right now we currently don't have a singular law that governs these issues. So right now we have more of what we would call like a patchwork of legislation.
Yeah.
We have largely tech regulation is largely sectoral here, meaning it's broken up by different issue areas like health, privacy, children's online safety, or financial data, and it's governed by a patchwork of state laws that vary in like scope and strength. So, for example, we have HIPAA that governs health data. We have COPPA, COPPA, that protects children online data. And we have like Fair Credit Reporting Act that regulates certain types of algorithmic decision making and credit. But there's no overarching framework that addresses how technology should work across industries, nor how it should handle emerging risks like algorithmic discrimination or AI-driven surveillance. So as a result, tech policy in the United States often depends on what's being regulated and who's doing the regulating. So whether it's Congress or a federal agency like the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, or the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, or state legislators are stepping in to like fill the gaps. So this fragmented approach makes it harder to address issues like AI, where harms and opportunities don't stay like neatly in one industry.
Right. Well, this is, I mean, it feels like a complicated mix. I mean, patchwork is a good word, but it also just feels like just very complicated in terms of covering what needs to be covered, especially as we're moving into this new era of what I think feels like kind of rapid expansion, particularly for AI.
Absolutely.
So I think that that I have like 1,000 questions, and I do want to talk about AI policy, but you mentioned content moderation, and so I also want to kind of get into a conversation with you about content moderation. We talk oftentimes here about the broader kind of mis and disinformation ecosystem that we find ourselves in, right? And folks, struggling to figure out what's real and what's not real in their online consumption. It feels like that is getting more and more complicated. And it feels like even as we think about some of the issues that are in the news right now, it's hard for people to, one, keep up with everything, but also complicated to know if what they're seeing is actual accurate information or not. And that all feels like it's going to be increasingly complicated because of the way that AI will play a role in sort of warping and distorting information that folks are getting. But those feel like some of the challenges that our community is facing in the next, I don't know, days, months, years.
I mean, we're already facing it now. So absolutely, these issues are especially compounded by AI. I mean, AI has been around, but now with the whole generative AI, ChatGPT, the deep fakes, things are more pressing than ever.
Yep. All right, when we come forward, we're going to continue this conversation with Danielle Davis, Director of Technology Policy at the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies. Stay with us.
You're part of the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire on KBLA Talk 1580.
Why'd I go to the doctor? My heart would race just taking my son to practice. It didn't feel right. So I got checked out. Turns out I have atrial fibrillation, which increases the risk of stroke about 5 times.
Symptoms like irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain, shortness of breath, fatigue, or lightheadedness can come and go. But if it's AFib, the risk of stroke remains. If you have symptoms, contact a doctor.
I'm so glad I did.
Visit notimetowait.com. Sponsored by Bristol Myers Squibb and Pfizer.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you that we keep us safe. Every girl deserves a chance to shine. That's the belief behind Forgiving for Living, Inc. Since 1999, this organization has been empowering at-risk girls ages 13 to 18, helping them overcome behavioral and mental health challenges. Founder Wendy Gladney's personal journey inspired the mission to give girls hope and purpose through the power of forgiveness. Through their ambassador program, workshops, and annual annual conference, Forgiving for Living has touched over 3,000 young lives, providing mentoring, life skills, training, and tools for building self-esteem and confidence. You can make a difference. Visit forgivingforliving.org to donate, volunteer, become a mentor, or find help for a young girl in need. Forgiving for Living, Inc., building brighter futures for young girls. Visit forgivingforliving.org today. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, Black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
Let's get back to more of the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire right now on KBLA Talk 1580.
You are listening to the Black Pack, and we are here with Danielle Davis, Director of Technology Policy at the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies. And Danielle, the current U.S. president says many things. And one of the things that he likes to talk about all the time is what he and his friends call woke, right? They like to talk about woke all the time. I don't think they ever understood what they were saying or what they really meant, or maybe they actually did. And I think we probably all know what woke really stands for. But the word comes into play even here as we're talking about technology and AI regulation in particular. So before, in our earlier conversation, we were talking about the role the federal government plays in tech policy. The Trump administration has talked about the AI plan that they're going to release, and which he claims is quote unquote woke free, right? So when he is using words like that, which is it seems intended to to rile up his base, to suggest that something nefarious is happening. What is he talking about? What is he talking about when he is referring to this idea of woke-free AI?
Absolutely. So I really thank you for this question, because this is just really one of those important moments where political language is it's doing a lot of things, but in particularly is doing a lot of heavy lifting. And we need to kind of step back and look at that in terms of what it means for policy. So I kind of want to just go over what the action plan is first before I answer that question. So in July, the White House released its long-awaited AI action plan. So this was framed as a strategy to help the U.S. lead artificial intelligence development globally, worldwide. Like, we're going to be a national force with AI policy, with AI development. And it came alongside an executive order that was also titled Preventing Woke AI in the Federal Government, which made headlines for that language alone. But the president claimed that the plan would help the federal government avoid woke AI. And he's used this term, as you just stated, in many contexts. He's used this term regularly on the campaign trail when he was running for president, in his speeches as president, but now he's embedding it into official policy. So what do I mean when I say that? What I mean is, in this context, the phrase woke AI is being used to describe any attempt to make AI systems more fair, more inclusive, more reflective of the diverse society that we live in. The administration is doing, both through executive order and through the AI action plan, is trying to redefine fairness and equity and even bias detection as forms of ideological interference. So under this framework, if a tech company designs an AI system that tries to mitigate discrimination, for example, let's
Yeah.
take and let's say that they want to analyze whether an algorithm disproportionately harms Black communities or
Right.
Black applicants in hiring or housing, that system could be disqualified from use in federal government. The executive order essentially directs agencies to only procure models that conform to quote unquote truth seeking and quote unquote ideological neutrality, which is like not really a thing, but it also requires the National Institute of Standards and Technology, better known as NIST, to remove terms like misinformation or DEI and even climate from its AI risk management framework, which is widely used across the government and industry. So what that means in practice is that the tools meant to address bias are now being treated as bias themselves.
Right.
It's not necessarily just about semantics. It's a shift in how the federal government is defining responsible AI. It narrows the focus of AI governance to just technical performance and global competitiveness, and sidelines conversations about digital rights, historical discrimination, and harm mitigation, and how it all fits together, especially for Black communities, because we're most susceptible and most vulnerable to the harms that AI presents.
Well, this is wildly consistent, right, with the way that they've approached um, almost everything in terms of in almost, ensuring, right, that discrimination will happen across government agencies and across different kinds of policy because they are essentially disallowing anyone to talk about what bias is or what discrimination is. And then, of course, we also know kind of eliminating the civil rights offices within all the departments within government. But this is, terribly consistent with their approach to governing and governing in a way that effectively will allow for open discrimination even in our technology. I think that's my like layperson's way of trying to understand what it is they think they're doing. Does that feel?
I understand that perspective because it's like what's confusing to me is that it's almost just a blatant like disregard of what things that we already know. Like we already
Yeah.
have seen
Yeah.
how AI systems replicate inequality when they're not checked.
Yeah.
We've seen how facial recognition tools misidentify darker skinned people at much higher rates. We've seen how predictive policing systems send more patrols to neighborhoods that have already been more over policed. Algorithms are used in hiring and lending, have essentially reinforced patterns of exclusion that go back to redlining and segregation. So these aren't hypotheticals here.
Right.
Like this is a intentional disregard of history and now trying to make it seem like, oh, well, we want everything to be neutral. Well, tech is not neutral. Like that is a myth. It's not neutral. It's based on the society in which it sits.
Yeah. And thank you for that, because there are these specific kind of examples in which there are specific harms to communities of color and specifically to Black communities because the tech itself is actually biased, right?
The data that is informing the tech is
Right.
often biased, yes.
Right, because it is designed by people who have biases. And I think that's the tech didn't create itself.
Like all of us do, but the issue kind of comes in when, you have a specific group designing tech for all of a diverse America. If like I said in one of my episodes on my podcast, The Miseducation of Technology, is that if Black people were designing the tech solely for all of America, there would be present biases too. Like it's a very interesting thing to just disregard that. Like we have a certain tech company that essentially you can look it up yourself. I won't necessarily say the name, but a certain tech company where their AI labeled two Black individuals as gorillas.
Right. Yes, I remember this.
Like that is a deeply embedded, insult in
Yeah.
our community, and we know why, but how else would that get there if Black people are not in the room
Right.
building these technologies. And that's how we get all of this. But it's not a diverse population that's building these technologies, but they're building it for a diverse population.
Right. And as the tech industry, like, many industries, runs away from diversifying its workforce, right? We can see how the complications and the potential problems just layer on top of each other. So one other, just I want to shift us just a little bit, and that is, like what the concerns that are out there around the impact on workers, right, and the workforce, and that is, sort of when we think about, and I feel like when I was a kid, right, there was always this concern about, automation, how technology was gonna, take all of our jobs, or that people are going to lose, we're going to lose their jobs. Whole workforces would be gone because of automation, and the expansion of technology within industries. And it was always very scary, right? But I think that we've sort of survived in some ways, right? But this feels like something different, or that we're headed into a different era. And the thing that came to mind when I was thinking about this really is the is Waymos, right? And the sort of driverless cars that we see here in Los Angeles everywhere, like literally driving down my street
Yeah.
nearly every day. But made me think about, like, so what happens to the rideshare drivers, right? Who are out there, and that's how they make their income. And so I just wonder what kinds of policy do we need to be considering, or should legislators be considering when we think about how we make sure that Black workers in certain industries, right, aren't further displaced because of the sort of growing tech and automation that we see in our economy.
Yeah, absolutely. Transportation is one of the many industries that Black workers are overrepresented in, and that it's going to be impacted, and it's currently being impacted by this shift to automation. So when we see, like, at the end of the day, this isn't, we can't, we can't go backwards.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
Automation
this
is
is the
happening.
thing. Yeah.
Technology is happening. Like it's a thing already.
Yeah.
But what we can do is start to now mitigate for what's inevitable. So if we know that we're going in this direction of self-driving cars,
Mhm.
maybe we start training or providing reskilling programs for people who are in these professions.
Yeah.
Maybe we start having intentional policies aimed at the group. Like that's why I say you can't just say neutral, like this idea of neutrality when it comes to tech, because tech does not impact everyone the same way.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, we could be doing more things to prepare our workforce for these shifts that are going to happen, and also just prepare our communities. And a
Mhm.
lot of times I find that our community is completely oblivious the to the shift that is happening right in front of our eyes. They're
Mhm.
not necessarily aware
Yeah.
until there's no longer a job,
Yeah.
until your warehouse job goes away because now a robot can do it fully by itself,
Right.
till your administrative position, your executive assistant position goes away, which is primarily filled by Black women, goes
Mhm.
away because of the generative AI, Chat GPT, Claude, all of these scheduling
Yeah. Yep.
apps that can now do what you do on a higher scale. So
Right.
a lot of the time, why I even created the podcast, why I do the work that I do, is to inform Black communities of what's happening, because no one's telling us this, and it's not in the headlines like, hey, this is what's happening to Black communities. So I feel a deep responsibility to making this information accessible and getting it out into the Black community so we can prepare ourselves, because like I said, this is happening whether or not we realize it or not. It's
Yeah.
happening, and we have to be prepared.
Yeah, and I feel like the reason why the driverless car stands out to me is precisely because of that. Like I feel like I remember it being a conversation one day,
Mhm.
right? And sort of being like, oh, whatever, driverless cars and driverless helicopters, right, that are going to take us from one place to the other by the time the Olympics get here, and feeling like it was kind of Jetsons,
Yeah.
right? That it was,
And
sort of funny and like, and now there's cars driving around everywhere, right? And I think it's both that, people don't know that it's happening, right? That we're sort of unaware that it's actually happening. But it also just feels like the speed with which this stuff is coming into existence is just super fast. And I think that's the thing that catches us off guard too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I've been doing this for almost 10 years, and AI has always been a thing. It has always existed for a very long time, just the definition of AI in general. But the shift that's happening, I do think it's caught everyone by surprise. Like, it's not necessarily a surprise for anybody working who's steeped in this, but the average American, yeah, I can understand why it's catching you by surprise. But these were like whistles that we have been trying to blow for a very long time. Like, this is the direction we're going in, but now that we're seeing it actually come to fruition before our eyes, I think now is even more of a opportunity to speak to our communities, and like we have actual tangible examples we can get, like, look, Waymo
Yeah.
is likely going to completely take all driving jobs. So we really have to be diligent, and really just have to want to inform ourselves and want to learn about where this shift is taking us.
Yeah. And will you just say the name of your podcast again so that folks who and I guess that's probably everybody at this point, listen to podcasts, they can find your podcast so they can learn more about this?
My podcast is called The Miseducation of Technology. It essentially explores ways in which the data that has miseducated technology, and it's more than just a podcast about critique. It's also about solutions. So I always provide actionable solutions to what you can do to protect yourself or address the issue that we talked about. And you can find it on Apple and Spotify podcasts.
Okay. Really important for all the reasons that you have said, that we sort of arm ourselves with data and information in this moment, because it does, again, it feels like it is happening really fast, and I agree with you. It probably feels like it's happening really fast because we just weren't aware of it as it was evolving, and then suddenly it was there. So on the other side, we're going to continue this conversation with Danielle Davis, Director of Technology Policy at the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies. Stay with us. This is KBLA Talk 1580.
More of the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Black Maryland Governor Wes Moore is awarding $17 million for energy upgrades in Maryland schools through the Decarbonizing Public Schools program. 30 schools statewide will benefit. A judge has cleared Drew Dixon to move forward with her lawsuit against former music exec L.A. Reid. She claims he blocked major deals after she rejected his advances. The case proceeds under New York's Adult Survivors Act. Reid denies the allegations and now needs new legal counsel. Trial is set for September. And advocates are pushing Tampa, Florida city leaders to invest in restoring Zion Cemetery, the city's first burial ground for African Americans. Over time, the site was neglected and built over by homes and businesses. Geraldine Williams, who has ancestors buried there, appeared before the city council asking for $8 million to create a memorial and research center. While no vote was taken, Williams remains determined. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
This summer, come aboard Long Beach's iconic Queen Mary. With guided tours, 25-plus exhibits, and decades of history to explore, it's the perfect day out. Make your way to the Queen Mary and experience it all for yourself. For more information, visit queenmary.com.
Is this the time?
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The LA Sparks' impressive turnaround in the WNBA continues. They beat the Connecticut Sun Thursday night 102-91, 21 points for Derica Hamby. The Sparks are 8-1 in their last 9 games to improve to 14-15. The LSU women's basketball program is showing some love for HBCU teams. The Southeastern Conference powerhouse has 4 HBCU opponents on their schedule this season: Langston University, Alcorn State, Morgan State, and Alabama State. Interesting development in the NFL regarding black quarterbacks. For the first time in NFL history, all 4 teams in the NFC East Division have a black starting quarterback. Dak Prescott with the Dallas Cowboys, Jalen Hurts with the Philadelphia Eagles, Jayden Daniels of Magic Johnson's Washington Commanders, and Russell Wilson with the New York Giants. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcasts of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Follow the leader. Oh my God. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Sometimes an identity threat is a ring of professional hackers. And sometimes it's an overworked accountant who forgot to encrypt their connection while sending bank details.
I need a coffee.
And you need LifeLock, because your info is in endless places. It only takes one mistake to expose you to identity theft. LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year with promo code NEWS at LifeLock.com. Terms apply.
Let's go.
You're still glowing, flirting, grooving. You've still got it. But your immune system weakens as you age, making it harder to fight flu, pneumococcal pneumonia, RSV, and COVID-19. Vaccines are a key part of any health routine and help strengthen your immune response. Ask your doctor or pharmacist which vaccines you need. Schedule in minutes at VaxAssist.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
At Providence, health equity is the foundation of our community health initiatives, ensuring care reaches those who need it most. Heart disease is the leading cause of death in America. African Americans face a higher risk of life-threatening issues like hypertension, the #1 cause of stroke. 55% of Black adults have high blood pressure. The good news is 80% of heart disease is preventable with healthy lifestyle changes and patient-centered care provided by the Providence Heart and Vascular Institute. From routine screenings to advanced procedures, Providence provides comprehensive care for the heart conditions that overly impact our community by ensuring patients receive treatments tailored to their needs. Let's stop the trend of being 30% more likely to die from heart-related problems. Take charge of your heart health with world-class cardiologists who deliver the compassionate care you deserve. Visit providence.org/SoCalHeart. That's providence.org/SoCalHeart to request an appointment.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Worried about eviction? You have rights, and Stay Housed LA can help. Stay Housed LA is a partnership between LA County, the City of Los Angeles, and local service providers. From Lancaster to Long Beach, we're here to help you with tenant education workshops, legal clinics, free legal services for eligible tenants, and online resources about tenant protection laws. Don't face eviction alone. Call our hotline at 1-888-694-0040. That's 1-888-694-0040. Or visit stayhousedla.org. Stay Housed LA, keeping Los Angeles residents in their homes. Stay Housed LA, your rights, your home, our community. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
You're inside the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire on KBLA Talk 1580.
You are listening to the Black Pack. I'm your host, Adrianne Shropshire, here on KBLA Talk 1580, and we are talking with Danielle Davis, Director of Technology Policy at the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies, and we are talking about AI. We're talking about the rapid expansion and growth of AI and what that will mean for our communities. And Danielle, we were talking a minute ago about industries and workforce and the ways in which AI is showing up on the job, so to speak, or not actually, so to speak, like in reality. And I'm just wondering, because I was fascinated by when you started to talk about the kinds of work that AI right now has the potential to eliminate. And so I wanted to ask you just to talk a little bit more about that, so that listeners get where some of this is headed. And because you talked about both the industries and the types of work. But you also talked about, and I appreciate this, you saying this about your podcast, the kinds of solutions, right? So there are things that we can do to make sure that as AI and technology expands inside of industries, that we are helping those workers in those industries not just be left by the side of the road.
Absolutely. This automation shift is affecting multiple areas, like I discussed in the last section. We can even take customer service, for example. We've all walked into a store and have seen that at some stores, there are more self-checkout lines than there are actually cashiers. Like that is the way we're moving. Amazon has fully automated cashierless stores in parts of this country. Where those, and yes, it may be more profitable for the company to do such, things more efficient, right? Okay, I understand that. But there's a whole segment of jobs that are going to go away that have been stable employment or transitional employment for Black communities for decades. So what happens when McDonald's, which has done this, they have tested a fully autonomous store where the machines are flipping the burgers, dropping the fries, and getting your order out to you. Yeah. What happens when, like we said with like a Walmart? What happens when a Walmart goes fully cashierless store? You're just walking up to the cashier, you to the kiosk, you're doing your thing and you're leaving. There's going to be a whole segment of our community that is completely blindsided and essentially locked out of economic employment.
Yeah. So actually, can I just throw one? Because this was the thing that tripped me out. In an airport, I was going somewhere. I don't remember what airport I was in. It may have been LAX, where essentially you walk into the little gift store area. You get what you want, right? Like, oh, I forgot my toothpaste. You grab a thing of toothpaste. Oh, let me grab some chips. Let me get a bottle of water. And you essentially to get in, you have to put in your debit card or credit card to get through the little automated gate. Then you go in, you grab what you want, and other people may have experienced this. I was tripped out. You get your thing, and then you just walk out. Yeah. Right? Like the sensors know what you have taken, and there's nobody. You engage with nobody. Yeah. You just get your stuff and you walk out. And that felt like an escalation to me.
Yeah, a few years ago, I live right outside of DC, and I was in Virginia, and they had just got an Amazon store, Amazon Fresh store, and that store was exactly like that. I remember walking in there, I was like, so what do I do? And they were like, you could just walk out. And I'm like, are you sure? But it's linked to my Amazon card. So it's like, it's a very, very interesting time because.
And as a Black person, to be told just grab stuff and it's
Walk out.
okay, just walk out. I was like, oh no, 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 someone is gonna stop me and ask me, right? Like, mm-mm.
Yeah, it's a very interesting time we are living in, and it pains me and really worries me when I think about how it's happening very quickly, like you stated multiple times, and our community is so not in a position to shift if they needed to. If your job went away tomorrow, they are not in a position to shift to something else.
Right. I do think, I mean, the you talked about the sort of customer service. You also said when we were talking earlier, you talked about like administrative assistant roles, and that when you said that for me, I was like, oh yeah, right, of course, because we're all using scheduling,
Yeah.
technology.
Mhm.
But that or I think you said Chat GPT, things that you would ask people to, write up this or create this, and I've not used Chat GPT, so I don't totally understand it, and so partly I don't use it because I'm like I don't know what that is, right? And I also am not trying to train the AI, right, on things that I need to write. But it does feel like it feels like there really are more and more people using it, I think. Is that correct?
Absolutely. It's I don't want to sit here and make it seem like like tech is just like this horrible thing. Like it's
Yeah, yeah,
very, very efficient,
yeah.
especially if we talk about it for Black entrepreneurs. But when we're talking about people who are in specific professions right now and how automation, this drive towards automation is going to impact them, that's where it gets worrisome. Like that's why I say we know where it's going. Like we need to be educating the executive assistant on like, look, you may want to start now trying to reskill to
Right.
something else. There are plenty of boot camps, there are plenty of resources and organizations that actually help people to get additional tech skills and switch into something else regarding IT or anything. But
Hmm.
and with my podcast episode 3, I have a companion blog post on my website, attorneydanielle.ai, that gives you these resources for like if you are looking into reskilling right now because you are paying attention and you know where we're going with automation. It's a whole resource list that I provide that can point you in a direction of organizations, free resources, and also low cost resources that will help you essentially change your whole career in your life.
Yeah, I think that is, I mean, just hugely, hugely helpful for folks as everyone's trying to understand what's happening and what it's going to mean for our community. I just one more question for you because I said earlier that I wanted to ask you about content moderation, and so just a quick question about you talked about I think you talked about Section 203 earlier of the Communications Decency Act, and just the sort of I mean I feel like the challenges that we have in terms of what our expectations are or not of are or are not of our tech companies in terms of content moderation and what's coming across our screens, what's coming across our kids' screens. How should people understand how that's evolving as well?
Well, first we have to understand the law that that governs this, and that would be Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act.
230, right?
And that law essentially says that, these companies, not just this law doesn't only govern um, platforms like the social media companies, but we usually talk about it in that
Yeah.
context. But
Hmm.
it governs more than that. But if we're just talking about social media companies, it's saying that they are not held liable for the content that their users post in general, like as a general level. And
Hmm.
the second part of that law also states that they can also take down um, or keep up, this is their decision,
Yeah.
content that they feel is okay or that they deem is objectionable.
Hmm. Hmm.
So in all of that, essentially they're not held liable for anything that we post. Now, if
Right.
you, Adrian, say something that is a lie about me, I can go to Adrian and say something about her, but I can't have them as the middleman say, well, you facilitated this,
Right.
because in the law is looked at, they are not necessarily publishers of our content, the third party of our content, they are just hosts. And if they were held liable for every single post that we did, like they wouldn't be able to do it. It would be impossible for someone like Facebook, who has over, 1 billion people on their platforms, most of which are in the United States, and try to say, well, we're going to go through every post that someone makes. And so in an atmosphere where, let's say, they weren't held liable, or they weren't but in an atmosphere that they were not held liable, or if they were held liable, they would be, what do you think the atmosphere would be if they were held liable for every post? That's what I'm trying to get at. What do you think? Right. We wouldn't be able to comment, most likely. Like, the internet as we know it would likely change. So I don't want to sit here and make it seem like Section 230, it gives us a lot of things. Section 230 is the reason why Black Lives Matter movement was able to flourish the way it did online. It's the reason why we're able to organize and do all the things that we do. But it also perpetuates a lot of harm and discrimination for our community as well. And that's where we have to find the balance of how do we address this? Because it's a double-edged sword. It gives us positives, but it definitely gives us harms.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that, because you've said that a couple of times, which I think is useful and for everyone to sort of have perspective on, which is some of this stuff is actually helpful, right? And useful for us, generally in our lives in terms of how we socialize, but also in terms of the work that we do. But there is this kind of dark side to it, right? That I think that if we're not paying attention to, and our legislators are not paying attention to, can bring and cause real harm in our community. So I want to thank you both for being here, sharing all this with us, helping us understand, explaining it to me like I'm 5 years old, but also for the education work that you're doing. So I am deeply appreciative. This is a subject matter that I feel like we need to understand better, know more about, and frankly, I think, to your point, talk more about in our communities before we just find ourselves overwhelmed. So Danielle Davis, Director of Technology Policy at the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies, appreciate you for joining us. Stay with us. This is KBLA Talk 1580.
You're part of the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire on KBLA Talk 1580.
If you're an adult in need of an accredited high school diploma, the Los Angeles Public Library can help. You can earn one for free in as few as 5 months online with 24/7 access. You also get a personal academic coach plus special training focused on 9 in-demand industries, as well as a resume and cover letter to advance your career. Visit the website at lapl.org/diploma. That's lapl.org/diploma.
This is the story of the one. As a lineman, he does whatever it takes to keep the power on in his community. And he wants a partner like Grainger who does the same. Grainger offers the professional-grade products he needs, from voltage detectors to harnesses to hard hats, plus fast, dependable delivery, so he can rise to every challenge. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Oh no, stomach issues again?
Stomach issues?
Who are you?
Your pancreas. I could be the real reason for your diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or loose oily stools.
I thought it was my stomach.
People often do, but any of these symptoms could mean having a condition called exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. With EPI, the pancreas doesn't release enough enzymes to break down food, but EPI is manageable. Use the symptom checker on identifyepi.com and speak with your doctor. That's identifyepi.com. Sponsored by AbbVie.
KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about. KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Los Angeles Regional Food Bank is on a mission to fight hunger and provide nutritious food to those in need across our community. They partner with federal, state, and local programs advocating for better policies and funding for critical hunger relief programs like Cow Fresh, the Emergency Food Assistance Program, and the Child and Adult Care Food Program. The food bank works with coalitions and local representatives to make sure hunger is addressed in every district of LA County. They also run nutrition education campaigns, raise hunger awareness, and source nutritious food for distribution, all while supporting regulations that allow food pantries to operate safely. Want to help? Visit lafoodbank.org or call 323-234-3030 to volunteer or find a food bank near you. Together, we can ensure that no one goes hungry in Los Angeles County. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Let's get back to more of the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire right now on KBLA Talk 1580.
You are listening to the Black Pack here at KBLA Talk 1580. I'm your host, Adrianne Shropshire, and I needed to bring someone in to talk to me about that last little segment about AI and automation and how tech is coming for us all. And so I invited back friend of the show, journalist, commentator, Anoa Changa, to talk to me about what we just heard. So I don't know, Anoa, how did you feel about Danielle's commentary on where we are with not with tech policy, but also the ways in which things are changing so rapidly?
Yeah, thanks for inviting me to chat, Adrian. I mean, like Danielle really had a great way of really honing in, I think, on a lot of the concerns a lot of
Yeah.
us are having. I will note though, when you all start talking about like the Waymos, I finally just saw them recently here in Atlanta. And the
Really?
first thing I thought was, who gave that thing a license to drive? Because it was speeding, it didn't seem like it knew where it was going. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
like, if this is the best AI has to offer, we're not getting all the
We're
way
in
replaced
trouble.
just yet. But what she noted on in terms of like how it seems to all of us, how rapidly the technology is shifting and changing. I mean, the policy considerations that, her and the Joint Center are advocating for, I mean, they definitely need to be something else we're working into our radar, especially when we're thinking about the conversation. I did get to check in the conversation you were having last week with Diedrich from the Joint
Uh-huh.
Center about just the job numbers and the
Yeah.
economy. So looking at
Yeah.
those things together, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I think that's the layers. I think the last thing I said was that when you start to think about the ways in which all this stuff layers on top of each other, it's very concerning. And I think, she made some good points about, we can see the negative impacts, the potential negative impacts of all of this, and the ways in which real people will be affected by automation. But there's also, there's progress in some of the technology that we're seeing. The thing that I was saying that like I'm not a chat GPT user, like I don't want to be training the AI on what we're thinking and doing. But and so that was a little bit of an untruth. So I was someone asked me if I had a job description for a particular position. And I said I didn't. And I said, but I think you can just you can probably, if you need something quick, you probably can just use ChatGPT. And then I was like, well, let me see. I'm giving people advice. I'm not entirely sure myself. So I went on, I, plugged in what they needed. And Anoa, it took 15 seconds for the whatever machine to pump out a job description, right? And I was actually quite shocked by how quick it was. And I know that that's why a lot of folks use it for their work, is because you can produce stuff very, very quickly that might have taken you an hour to do, right? I think that's the upside, maybe.
I think what you're saying is right? Like there's definitely this like tone and balance with it, because I think one of the other things that Danielle mentioned, which maybe a lot of us haven't thought about, is like over the years, even us using like this transcribe function, whether it's Zoom. I often use Otter when I'm transcribing interviews. I don't use the enhanced AI functions that along with that, but a lot of us have already been using some form of this technology over the last several years. But it seems like this explosion in terms of the generative AI, I think she was naming too, when you're thinking about like all the deep fakes we started seeing even getting ahead of the last election cycle and just feeding into, I think you touched on this, Adrian, just like the way in which misinfo and disinfo already is aimed at our community. So what does having this technology as it's like scaling up rapidly, and then there are no checks in place because the policies are way behind where the tech and society is, what does that put us at risk for? We talked about the economics, but like just even everything we're saying in the political sphere, where does that put us?
Yeah, I think that's right. And that's, again, like, because we talk about this all the time. And there's certainly, yes, there's the job aspects. I really was, when she talked about customer service and when she talked about, administrative assistant roles, that to me, I was like, oh, yeah, right. Like, this is there's a real potential, economic hit, right? That our communities where we're over, for jobs that we're overrepresented in, real potential hit, right? That folks might get hit with, right? And then the other is that people need to start thinking about transition, right? And learning these new technologies for the roles that they have. But on the other side is the thing that we grapple with all the time, which is this mis and disinformation, propaganda campaigns. I think we're seeing it more and more, the deep fakes, right? Where you don't actually know if what you're seeing is true, right? This sort of forcing us all into this virtual reality that we can't, and if we don't, it isn't necessarily that, there's an attempt to make us believe every single lie, but if we question every single thing, then what is even truth at that point, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely correct. And I think also just like even when she was talking about and breaking down, like I've seen posts, but there's so much happening right now. But I've
Right.
seen posts about different, groups talking about what does a people focused AI program. So, seeing, hearing her talk more about like the Trump AI plan, action plan, and the anti-wokeness, which is that's their catch-all phrase. But what we really see, and we've already been seeing it with the way in which the social media platforms and their content moderation have been trying to do things, again, even before this election, with treating, having accuracy, having truth, having, protections and safeguards that built in to protect our communities and other groups that get targeted and impacted by far right, hate groups, for lack of a better phrase. We've already been seeing the way like this goes unchecked and the harm, and now we have federal policy. Like we had colorblind federal policy, for decades, and now we're going back to a period where we have federal policy that is very intentionally trying to not just like erase us, but like actively enshrine harm against our communities. And so I do also find it interesting just from, I'm assuming since the AI moratorium that he was heavily in favor of was not a part of the big bad bill, that's also what kind of prompted some of this. And so it's going to be interesting how much is being put back on the states to deal with as well right now.
Right. Yeah, and again, just a hodgepodge of whatever goes. I think that we see, that it does not work if the federal government actually doesn't provide regulation for all of this, and this is part of the scary bit for all of us. All right, so I appreciate that. There's so much more that we're going to have to talk about on this topic, and I appreciate you for joining and helping us make some sense of what it is that is to come. Watch out for those Waymos. I appreciate all of you, all of our guests, first of all, for joining. Appreciate all of you for listening. As always, we will be back next Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Enjoy your weekend.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, now running for New York City mayor, denies speaking with President Trump about the race.
I've never spoken to him about the mayor's race.
This comes after a New York Times report claimed they had a call. Rival Zohran Mamdani slammed Cuomo over it, but Cuomo did not respond, only calling Black Mayor Eric Adams a, quote, wholly owned subsidiary of President Trump, end quote. Rapper Jay-Z is listed as the top pick to headline the Super Bowl 60 halftime show, according to a prediction market, Kalshi, that allows for legal betting on real-world events ranging from sports to politics to the weather and virtually everything else. And President Trump is ordering colleges to submit admissions data that includes race and